up, guys? Welcome into the Up and Under podcast. I'm your host, Hani. Joined with me, as always, it's Zeeshan.
Yo.
All right, man. It is one of the greatest times of the NBA season.
Yep.
A very eventful trade deadline for the NBA. I'm gonna say it's an understatement to say that this is one of the biggest trade deadlines we've had in a while.
I think it low key might actually be probably the biggest of all time.
It was insane.
These past few years have been insane.
Yeah, there's just this trade deadline in particular. There was so much movement, so many blockbuster deals, so much change that has happened in the NBA landscape within the past 24 to 48 hours since the time of recording this. You couldn't even sleep on the night of the 23rd.
You couldn't.
You could not. You would have missed the biggest news ever. We both were about to go to sleep, and then literally bombshell. Woj doesn't sleep. Shams never sleeps. Apparently, Woj won though in terms of how many trades broken.
Yeah, he did.
He won by one.
He won.
Woj is in the gym. Apparently, he was prepping for that. But yeah, lots of trades went down on this trade deadline. So on this episode, as promised, we're going to be doing our full trade deadline breakdown. We're going to break down some of the biggest trades that happened. And also, we kind of group some of these in because certain teams made a lot more moves than other teams. And certain moves were just connected into others because there was just so much movement. So we might miss a few smaller deals, but there was just a lot going on at this trade deadline. Without wasting any time, we're going to jump right in to our first trade that we want to talk about. This, I think, was the catalyst for this changed everything in terms of what we all thought was going to happen on this trade deadline.
Well, this was definitely the biggest trade of this trade deadline for sure.
Yeah, and it involves Kevin Durant heading to the Valley, heading to the Phoenix Suns. Yes, that move went down. Kevin Durant, the full trade details are as follows. Kevin Durant and TJ Warren are going to the Phoenix Suns in exchange for Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder. I'll talk about him in a second. 4 unprotected first-round picks in 2023, 2025, 2027, and 2029, and a first-round pick swap in 2028. Huge move for the Phoenix Suns and the Brooklyn Nets, to be honest with you. Just to break things down, from the Suns' point of view, this was the blockbuster move that they were trying to make in the offseason, that they wanted to do for a while now, especially with the new ownership group taking over now. They wanted to win, and they want to win now. They feel that this team has a chance to compete for a title. You pair Kevin Durant, who has 3 years left on his current deal, who's arguably a top 2, or even the top 1 best player in the world right now, with Devin Booker, who, again, still young, still super talented, with him for the next 3-4 years. You also have Chris Paul for this year, who, again, if things work out, although he's aging, that could be a good combination. But yeah, and DeAndre Ayton as well. You still have him on the roster. So this was a huge move for the Phoenix Suns, man. They went all in. Now, they definitely gave up a lot to make this move possible. I think giving up both Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson was a steep price to give up. I mean, obviously, Jay Crowder wasn't even playing for them anyways this season. And then the 4 unprotected picks. It's a lot. So basically, they need this to work. This has to work. And even for Kevin Durant, you can't keep moving around, ending up on these top tier teams with a lot of talent and not win anything. So this has to work. It's a lot to do it. But again, the Suns are banking on the fact that you have KD, Devin Booker, Chris Paul, and a decent supporting cast. It should be good enough for them to make a deep run in the Western Conference. Not only this year, but next year, maybe potentially the year after that as well.
Well, I think it has to be this year. I don't see... Chris Paul has looked old at times this season. He's had a couple of bursts here and there where he looks like at least, finals level Chris Paul, what we saw in a couple of years ago. But I think it has to be this year. Like I said, Chris Paul isn't getting any younger. Now, the other side to that is that, if it doesn't work for this year, Chris Paul's contract will be up soon, and you replace Chris Paul with another younger guy, right? But like I said, if you have Chris Paul on the team right now, you kind of got to get it. You got to get it done right now.
Yeah, pretty much. This has to work. And now the only question that I have for the Phoenix Suns is their depth. especially on defense. Like, you basically traded your three best defensive players in Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and Jay Crowder. So you got to get guys to kind of replace those guys. But I think, again, you have still the top tier talent, and I think they're going to be big players in the buyout market, which is looking to be very interesting in the NBA coming up. But overall, man, this was a huge move for the Suns. They swung for the fences. They completely changed the dynamic of the NBA now. And literally, I'm just glad Kevin Durant out of the East, just on a personal note. But huge deal for the Phoenix Suns. Overall grade for them, I'm giving them a B+. Because I think it could also be an A-, but again, we just don't know how it's all going to fit together. But a huge move to start things off.
I would give them like a A-. Maybe even an A in my opinion. It's just like, bro, it's Kevin Durant, man. Like,
the potential of this could be like an A+ move if they win a championship out of this. So, yeah, like this is a huge move for the Phoenix Suns. Flipping things over to the Brooklyn Nets, and as much as it really sucks to admit that your Big Three experiment failed, like, let's be honest, that was a colossal failure.
that's the biggest failure of all
Like,
time, I think.
come on, you had KD, Harden, and Kyrie. They only played like 16 games together, and you got only one playoff series win out of those guys. I mean, that is arguably worse than the the Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and the Darren Williams era of Brooklyn Nets.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. At least that era was understandable because Paul Pierce and KG were done by that point, right? Or somewhat done. Paul Pierce still killed us on a pretty frequent basis. And Darren Williams, well, we didn't know at the time, but this guy's career was about to be over as well, right? So at least that was more understandable why it didn't work. But this was like I said, I think this is the biggest failure in NBA history.
No, for sure. And I think the Nets themselves were done. Like, Joe Tsai was just done with all the noise, all the drama, everything that happened with that team. And he just wanted a clean slate. And to be honest with you, if you had to deal Kevin Durant, they got if not the best, or one of the best type of hauls you can get back for a guy like him. Like, not only did you recover most of the draft picks that you lost in the Harden deal, like, you basically got pretty much all of them back. Now, obviously, they're not going to be as high-ranking picks as you would like them because the Suns are expected to be a good team. But either way, unprotected picks, they're yours. You can do whatever you want with them. But you also got two studs in Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges, who, again, they're under team-friendly contracts. They can help grow alongside your already young depth in Cam Thomas and Nick Claxton and other guys. Now, they also made a subsequent move. So the Nets flipped Jay Crowder to the Milwaukee Bucks in exchange for 2 second-round picks. And, the Bucks sent George Hill, Serge Ibaka, Jordan Nwora, and 3 second-round picks over to the Indiana Pacers. So, again, pretty good haul for the Nets, man. If I had to grade them, I think they got an A. It's a solid return back. The Nets can still be competitive this year. And again, they have a really bright future going forward.
They built for the future while still being, a fun team to watch, good team.
Especially with the way Cam Thomas has been playing. He's been balling.
Bro, back 40-point games.
Just got fined $40K though.
Yeah.
that just happened too. But yeah, I think it was an A. I think it was a very, very good return for Kevin Durant. And just quickly on the Bucks and the Pacers, obviously they kind of went into the subsequent move. The Bucks, they got a solid PJ Tucker replacement type of player who will help them spread the floor. He's going to be a good defender next to Giannis. Again, they gave up a few players that they weren't really using, and they got back someone who they're probably going to use in their rotation. So I think it's a solid move for them. They get a B. The Pacers, they have lots of cap space, so getting back picks in this deal is a huge win for them. And they're most likely going to buy out Serge Ibaka and potentially George Hill as well. So,
and I mean, Jordan Nwora has shown flashes where, maybe he could be a productive player. So, Indiana, why not get a guy like him, right? So, so that Kevin Durant deal was absolutely massive.
And that happened at 1:30 in the morning. Like, yeah, that was insane. That kicked off everything.
And, I guess for the grade for Milwaukee.
Oh, yeah, for both Milwaukee and Indiana, I'll give them both Bs. I just think they're solid moves. Helps both of them out in what they're trying to do. So, solid. I think it was a solid move overall. A huge move that changed everything in the NBA.
And if you're talking about that move, I think we also have to talk about the concurrent move that made that move possible, which was Kyrie Irving asking out. Now, granted, the episode we did last, we were talking about potential happenings around the trade deadline. Kyrie Irving literally asked for a trade right after, which was perfect timing. But Yeah, man. Kyrie Irving is, I think, the person that officially kickstarted this trade deadline for sure. Um,
He changed it a lot, like in terms of the direction a lot of teams were gonna head. After he made that trade demand, it was like, well, this can go a multitude of different ways.
well, because of the fact that, now KD also asked out afterwards. So the official trade was Kyrie Irving and Markieff Morris going to the Dallas Mavericks, and the Brooklyn Nets receiving Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, a first-round pick in 2029, and 2 second-round picks in a couple of years. So I think this, like I said, this was the move that kickstarted it all. For Brooklyn's sake, I think this signaled the end for the biggest failure, like I said, in NBA history.
Yeah.
In terms of Brooklyn, I think rightfully they did not want to sign Kyrie to a contract without having some assurances, and that's primarily why Kyrie asked out, because the reports were that they put a bunch of stipulations on a potential contract extension or contract re-up. But like I said, despite all of these issues, they got a pretty good package for Kyrie Irving. They get back Spencer Dinwiddie. They get back Dorian Finney-Smith. Two good players who can help you win right now, who can help build for the future, and two guys that can help out in the locker room next to a guy like, for example, like we talked about, Cam Thomas. They also got a bunch of picks, adding to their draft chest, right? They also, like you mentioned with the KD thing, they can now officially try to look past this massive, colossal failure of an era, right? They can finally try to move past it. They do have Ben Simmons still, which is, Ben Simmons is your superstar now, I guess.
Ben Simmons is the worst contract in the NBA. And I called it. I'm 100% taking full credit for this. I called it when he signed the deal. He was not worth that money. But, hey, that's Brooklyn's problem now.
And I mean, like you mentioned with the Kevin Durant deal, I think the main thing was you got what you could out of this package for Kyrie Irving, more so than even Kevin Durant, because Kevin Durant, he didn't really have the baggage that Kyrie has. You got basically a player with no trade value. You got significant assets for him. And so I think that is still a win for the Brooklyn Nets, whatever way you want to slice it. However, I do have to give them a little bit of flack and reduce the grade that I'm about to give them a little bit, just because how big of a failure this was. Somebody mentioned it. I saw it. This wasn't an era. It was an error.
There's a lot of those, to be honest with you, around the NBA.
I do find it funny that Josiah was still petty enough to not trade him to LA.
Hey man, you don't. I've learned a lot of things, but you don't do a billionaire dirty.
Exactly.
And Kyrie did him dirty. I 100% feel for Josiah, because I just think that the guy did not live up to his contractual obligation that he signed and that you paid him boatloads of money to do, and he didn't do his job. So of course you're going to be a little bitter. So why would you reward him by sending him to where he wants to go? And I still think that Brooklyn really just took this deal, and looking back on it, because of the Kevin Durant trade, it looks a lot better than it actually when it originally was. Yeah. But when the trade originally happened, I was like, really? You get a 2029 first and like 2 seconds? Yeah, 2029 first in 2 seconds. Like, Spencer Dinwiddie and Dorian Finney-Smith would help you if Kevin Durant were to stay. You can still remain competitive, but like, I'm sure you could have gotten a lot more. Like, you could have gotten the Lakers 2 unprotected picks and all that stuff. But now looking at it in the totality with the Kevin Durant move, it's not a bad return going forward.
Well, we all expected it to be LA, the Lakers, who would trade for Kyrie Irving, but it ended up being the Dallas Mavericks. Now, for the Dallas Mavericks, it is an understandable move. However, it screams desperation, right? This was a move that you heard all the rumors starting the season about how long could they keep Luka happy with the team that they have, and you knew Mark Cuban being Mark Cuban was going to itch for something to happen.
We wanted to include this in last week's episode, in the last episode actually, before the Kyrie Irving thing dropped. But basically, what we wanted to say was that Dallas was looking for that second star. They needed to find that guy to help Luka Doncic out. And once the Kyrie Irving news kind of came by, they were like, okay, this is probably the best chance we have to get a guy who we can pair with Luka and see if this works. And I think that's what the type of move that they made. They didn't really have to give up a ton to get him, and this could potentially be a decent fit.
Yeah, like you said, on paper, this could be a potential, very good fit, at least offensively. Now, assuming what we've seen before, they will probably try to recreate the Jalen Brunson and Luka Doncic dynamic. The problem is though that either like Kyrie and Luka are gonna have to take a little bit of steps back, especially Luka Doncic. We've seen what Kyrie can do, and he's played that second fiddle role in Cleveland, in Brooklyn. He took the off-ball role with James Harden being there. So we've seen that Kyrie, despite his antics and whatnot, can be capable of taking a little bit of a reduced role. We've never seen that with Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic, I think, will have to show that he can be a better off-ball player. We know he's not really a good off-ball player at all, similar to basically what James Harden was in Houston, where when he didn't have the ball, he would just stand there and do nothing. And that's not going to work with Kyrie Irving being there, particularly when you talk about the fit defensively, because the Dallas Mavericks took a big step back defensively.
Or lack thereof.
Well, you let go of your best perimeter defender and Dorian Finney-Smith, who played very well for you when he was in Dallas. They already had a bottom 10 ranked defense, and that's not going to get any better with Kyrie Irving being there next to Luka Doncic. So 2 negative defenders at the guard spots. Luka has gone better defensively. We've seen Kyrie at least try defensively what he can do. But like I said, you have Christian Wood as your center. You have Kyrie, Luka Doncic in your backcourt. This is not going to be a good defensive team, so the offense has to be able to make up for it. And, like I said, that's going to be the main issue. My point is with this trade quickly, I think this could be a good trade, but it seems to be at this point a pretty lateral move in terms of the fact that you're replacing Spencer Dinwiddie with the guy who's going to score. Granted, he's going to score more points, but it doesn't really address the issues that you're going to have, right? And so I think, like I said, it'll be possibly a pretty lateral move. And the fact that now you have Kyrie and all of the baggage that happens with Kyrie.
I will say this about Kyrie, though. I know there's definitely risk about Kyrie just being the wild card that he is, but he's on a contract here. He's trying to get another contract. So he's probably going to be on his best behavior, which he was actually in Brooklyn for the most. I mean, that was best behavior from Kyrie, asking for a trade. But he was doing his thing. He was playing well, being the good teammate and all that stuff. So in that regard, I'm not really worried about Kyrie Irving. And I think for the Mavs, it's not really as high risk as you think, because now at least you can test Luka Doncic, number one, to see how well does he fit with another star. The second thing you can do is see if these two fit together to determine a long-term solution, if this can be a long-term fit. Or 3, worst case it doesn't, you let Kyrie walk, and you have cap space now to go out and sign a potential superstar. So it's not as terrible as we all originally thought it was going to be. I just think this screams a Mark Cuban move. Mark Cuban is not a patient guy. He wants to win, and when he sees a deal, he's going to try to go for it.
Now, the assumption is that Kyrie, they have a deal on the table. The reports were something like a 3-year deal with like a player option for that 3rd year, kind of like a short-term prove it and be on your best behavior kind of deal. So that's the assumption. But either way, I think Dallas is locked in to Kyrie. If I had to give this a grade, I would give it. I mean, when factoring in the KD decision, I would give it a B just because of how much of a wild card this can be. But yeah, that's just my opinion on this whole Kyrie Dallas situation. I think like I mentioned, it screams desperation.
I mean, but it could work. It could work out in their favor. I mean, I'd also agree. I mean, a B seems reasonable for the Mavs.
And next up, we're going to talk about, I think, the busiest team at the trade deadline.
Listen, bro, they had a GM who was trying to keep his job. So
basically,
we're
talking about the Los Angeles Lakers now. The Los Angeles Lakers, I guess I'll break it down trade by trade. But short point, Rob Pelinka actually did a decent job at this trade deadline.
He made a new team at the deadline, pretty much.
This is pretty comparable to what Kobe Altman did in LeBron's final season in Cleveland, where they basically scrapped the entire Cleveland team and they went on that huge run afterwards. I think that's the hope of Rob Pelinka, that with this entirely new team, you can go on that kind of run that Cleveland did in 2018. The first trade that happened was Rui Hachimura going to the LA Lakers for Kendrick Nunn. And 2 second-round picks going to the Washington Wizards.
This was like early. This was like a month ago or something.
This was like, I think, the first trade of the trade deadline officially. Basically, for the Lakers, they traded away a bench piece that they weren't really using that much. He had been playing better, Kendrick Nunn, as of late, but either way, he had for the majority of his time there, he was bad. They receive a player who can hit the mid-range jumpers, who can ideally space the floor. He has been an up-and-down shooter, outside shooter, but ideally with more opportunities, he can space the floor for LeBron and AD. He gives you a nice role player. He's also a pretty big guy, so, like I said, ideally he can play a little bit of defense as well. So I think this was a pretty good move for LA, and it kickstarted what would be, I think, a pretty good trade deadline for LA.
It's a good rotation piece for them. It gives them versatility on the defensive side of things as well. And again, if he can just improve that jump shot, he can be a good floor spacer for LeBron. And he's young enough that, he kind of, they can still keep him around. And giving him a bigger role, a bigger opportunity, is kind of what he's been needing, actually, since he's come out of Washington. So, not a bad move to start things off.
The biggest move for the Lakers that they had was the trade between them, the Utah Jazz, and the Minnesota Timberwolves.
This was huge.
The Lakers got back D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, and Jared Vanderbilt. The Utah Jazz received Russell Westbrook, who will probably be bought out, Juan Toscano Anderson, Damian Jones, and the top 4 protected first-round pick in 2027. And then finally, the Minnesota Timberwolves received Mike Conley, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and 3 second-round picks. The first thing, they traded away Russell Westbrook in his contract. That is the biggest thing from this move.
They pulled off the Westbrook trade and somehow didn't get fleeced or didn't get worse by doing it. Which is surprising.
I don't know how Rob Pelinka pulled off this trade, but it was a pretty good trade. They get D'Angelo Russell back, who is also on an expiring deal, so if it doesn't work out, they don't have to do anything with him. But he solves an immediate need. He's been on fire this season from 3. He's shooting, I think, around 40%. So he fills that immediate need of shooting next to LeBron and AD. He's also a pretty good playmaker when he gets the opportunity. We saw that in Brooklyn. So he solves an immediate need. Now he does suck defensively, which is an issue, considering you don't have many great defenders on this LA team either. But yeah, D'Angelo Russell, I think, solves an immediate need. Malik Beasley, he's there for one purpose only. He's there to shoot the ball, and he's a pretty good shooter at that. His percentages have been down a little bit recently, but playing next to LeBron and AD, he'll get a lot of open shots.
Oh, yeah.
And then finally, I think the wild card in this is Jared Vanderbilt. I was very surprised the Lakers got him for basically nothing. He's on a small contract. He's one of my favorite players in the league. I think he's one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. He's, I think, pound for pound, one of the best rebounders in the league, especially at his size. So when you give up a guy like Patrick Beverley, who I'll talk about a bit later, and you get back a guy like Jared Vanderbilt, I think that's huge for you because you can put him on the perimeter. He's going to be a great rebounder for you. The one thing is I don't think he's going to be playing much next to AD just because of the lack of shooting, but I think he'll get great opportunities playing with LeBron in terms of him on those cuts. So I think this could be a great fit for Jared Vanderbilt, and I think this was overall a great trade for the Los Angeles Lakers.
The Lakers for sure got better from this move. I mean, again, you talked about D'Angelo Russell, and he doesn't even have to be the guy handling the ball. LeBron can do that one. You just have to be able to make shots in the corner, which is the stuff that Westbrook wasn't doing for them. Then you add a guy like Malik Beasley, again, a 2-guard who you can put in there. The Lakers starting lineup is just so much more balanced now when you make this type of move. And again, getting a guy like Jared Vanderbilt, I think this is the part that I think Pelinka really, really did well on, is that he got in pieces that are not only going to help him now, but could potentially be long-term fits in the future as well. Like, these are young guys that they can
Vanderbilt is on he has another year on his contract, and he's only on the books for like $3 million next year, which is a steal for Jared Vanderbilt. Yeah. So I'm very surprised they were able to get him. And then 2 more lesser trades that the Lakers made was they traded away Thomas Bryant to the Denver Nuggets in exchange for Devon Reed and 3 second-round picks. Again, this trade deadline was apparently all about second-round picks, so shout out second-round
There was a lot of second-round picks being moved around. Like, geez, man. Like, they were just like, yeah, here's a second, here's a second, here's a second.
Some people would question this move, but considering the situation, Thomas Bryant asked for a trade, and it kind of makes sense from his perspective because of the fact that he's a pretty good player offensively, but he wasn't really going to get the role that he wanted, especially with Jared Vanderbilt now coming in. AD is going to be starting as a center. So it was a bit of an understandable move, and the Lakers got rid of him. They get a couple of assets back for an expiring contract with Thomas Bryant, and it also frees up some space for some of their other guys. And in a consequent move, they traded away Patrick Beverley, which very sad about because Patrick Beverley's, as you guys may know, is one of my favorite players.
Listen, bro, he's going to go down in history by bringing up the camera.
He made his moment in Lakers history.
He absolutely did.
So, and they got Mo Bamba back, who basically fills the immediate need of... Ideally, he can block shots. Now we know Mo Bamba is up and down to say the least defensively, but he's a very good shooter at the center
He's
spot.
shooting 50% from the field, 40% from three this season, which is insane considering he's a big. And he's going to get an expanded role, especially considering AD's health is always up in the air. So he's going to get some run with the Lakers.
And then
Sorry, just to circle one back to the Westbrook trade, Minnesota low-key did a pretty good job. I think replacing D'Angelo Russell with Mike Conley was.
I don't know, man.
Listen, they didn't with Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, and Rudy Gobert. You don't need another guy to score. You need a guy who's gonna play make and be defensively responsible. That's who Mike Conley is. He's not gonna be that flashy guy, but I think he fits better than what D'Angelo Russell did for them. So I low-key think that's not a bad move for the Minnesota Timberwolves. But yeah, I mean, Patrick Beverley. This guy shouldn't tweet. This guy tweeted as soon as D'Angelo Russell got tweeted.
Man.
This is the second time it's happened to him, man. Where he's tweeted like, "Yo, this guy's coming in, bro. Got the gang back together," and then he was moved. Like,
in terms of Mo Bamba's attitude issues as well, I don't think that's gonna be an issue with LeBron there because LeBron would probably slap him if he did something stupid. In terms of this trade deadline, the grade for the Los Angeles Lakers, I would have to give them like an A-. I think they did great at this trade deadline.
Completely different team. Like they're a lot more improved, and they had to be, especially with the KD move.
Yeah. With the Washington Wizards, you traded away a sunk cost, basically, which was Rui Hachimura. That was still a failure of a pick and failure to develop him. They got back Kendrick Nunn, who's been playing pretty good for them, and a couple of picks. I'll give them like a solid C+, I guess. For Utah, I mean, they got a pick out of it, to say the least.
Danny Ainge loves his picks. Now, will he do anything with them? I think Utah's like 17 picks now?
Something like that.
Something insane like that. But again, Danny Ainge did this with Boston. He collected all these picks and didn't do anything with them. So be warned, Utah fans.
You got rid of Mike Conley, who wasn't really on your timeline as it was, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I hope he really does start playing better because I want him to succeed as a Canadian guy. This was pretty much a kind of a cost-cutting move for them and a draft pick move. They're a rebuilding team. I would give them a solid C. It wasn't really a big deal for them, I think. Minnesota, I'd have to disagree with you. I really did not like this move for Minnesota. I think some of it has to do with the fact that this whole D'Angelo Russell thing was kind of a failure. Now, granted, he had his moments in Minnesota, but it was kind of a failure. And they got back Mike Conley, who's basically at the end of his career. They got him back for the Rudy Gobert dynamic, but again, I don't really see this moving the needle for you much. They also got rid of picks. I don't know. I think Minnesota's just locked into this Rudy Gobert situation at this point, and it's not really working well. I would give them a D+. I'm assuming you would give them a higher grade.
I'd give them about a C. I think there's potential for it to fit better, but again, it depends on the health and if everyone's like, you know, if everyone like buys into that, you know, and that's gonna be the key thing there.
Denver, they got a nice backup big who can play offense. Unfortunately, that doesn't solve the defensive issue, because he sucks defensively. But I'd give them still a B+. And then Orlando, I mean, they failed at Mo Bamba spectacularly. You got a second-round pick out of it. Patrick Beverley's probably going to be released. I would give them a C as well.
Yeah, but I mean, the Lakers were busy, man. Like I will say the Lakers definitely, if we had to like pick, like do winners and losers, which we might end up doing in the near future of the trade deadline, the Lakers are for sure. They won this deadline. They got themselves better. They made some great moves, and yeah, we'll see what happens with the Lakers moving forward. I will say this, bro. They really just. I think after the fact that they lost the game where LeBron broke the record, which we'll talk about.
That was bad, bro.
You lost the game. LeBron broke the record. I think that was the last one. LeBron's like, "Yo, Pelinka, fix this shit, or you're out." I think that's what happened. But we'll talk about that a little later. Flipping things over to the basement of the LA nation or amount of teams. I don't know. I was trying to make a joke on the basement and the Lakers got the main floor, the Clippers got the basement apartment. You know what I'm saying? But the Clippers, as we predicted, were going to be low key buyers at this deadline. And again, we predicted them to be buyers, and they made some pretty interesting moves. Like the first move that they made was they made a trade with the Houston Rockets and the Memphis Grizzlies. They acquired Eric Gordon and 3 second-round picks in exchange for they sent John Wall back to the Houston Rockets, which they did him dirty by sending him back. And they sent Luke Kennard over to the Memphis Grizzlies, and in exchange, the Grizzlies sent Danny Green also over to the Houston Rockets. That was, I mean, besides the fact that you did John Wall dirty, I called this move actually in last week's episode where I said Eric Gordon might be someone on the Clippers' radar. A veteran shooter who can shoot the ball very well, understands how to play in deep postseason runs.
Well, he's going back to the Clippers as well.
He's going back to the Clippers. So
I think this trade deadline was like the most amount of players that went back to their former teams.
Yeah, very, very weird. But again, not a bad move for the Clippers. Not only do you get Eric Gordon, you got 3 second-rounders, which is insane as well. And again, you moved off Luke Kennard, which he was okay, but you upgrade with Eric Gordon. I think Eric Gordon's a better player.
And also,
Luke
you
Kennard.
get rid of that contract.
Yeah, and you get rid of John Wall's deal. Like, it kind of worked out.
No, but I was talking about Luke Kennard's deal as
well.
well.
Oh, sorry. You get Luke Kennard's deal as well. Like, you get out of that deal. So I think for the Clippers, that was a pretty good move, and that was one move out of a couple of moves that they made. They also made a deal with the Denver Nuggets. This actually ties into the Thomas Bryant deal. That was actually a paired deal now, where the Clippers get Bones Highland from the Denver Nuggets in exchange for 2 second-round picks, which for the Denver Nuggets, I'm very concerned. Was 2 second-round picks the best you can get for a young player in Bones Highland? I get it. He wasn't playing much for you guys, but he's young. He's talented. Somebody would have been able to give you more for him.
Bro, we could have given you Malachi Flynn, man.
Bro, we could have given you Malachi and 5 second-round picks, bro, for Bones Highland. Like, oh, man. The fact that the Clippers... Like, I feel like the Nuggets settled, but for the Clippers, low-key a decent move. You get, again, a quality backup guard who's young enough, who you can play. You can keep him long-term if you want to. It works out, especially getting rid of a guy like John Wall. You're getting a much more playable player in Bones Highland. And then finally, the Clippers also made a move they traded Reggie Jackson over to the Charlotte Hornets in exchange for Mason Plumlee. Now, if you checked out last week's episode, I basically said the Clippers had a couple of major issues. They were looking for a point guard, or like that third star. They also needed a backup center, and potentially they can get some extra shooting. They did 2 of those things, actually. They got the shooting in Eric Gordon, and they got the backup big in Mason Plumlee. And now this is like the 300th time a Plumlee has been traded, but hey, you can't have a trade deadline without it. But the fact is that Mason Plumlee will come in. He's going to be a solid big. He's going to give Ivica Zubac some much-needed rest in the postseason as well.
Well, I think he'll be more playable. I talked about last week when we talked about Ivica Zubac. I think Mason Plumlee is going to be more playable than Ivica Zubac. Mason Plumlee, he can move his feet better. He's much better passer.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he can do a lot more than Ivica Zubac can, technically. So I think this was a great move for them.
It's more depth for them, especially because, again, for a team that has Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and they still have Norman Powell, Robert Covington, Nick Batum, they still have a lot of depth on this Clipper team. So adding that center who you needed as a backup was a great move for them. Now, the only hole that they have left to fill is getting their starting point guard. Now, obviously, they just traded away John Wall and Reggie Jackson.
Well, I think they need a point guard in general because Bones Highland...
He's not a starter.
He's not really a point guard either.
Yeah.
He's not much of a playmaker. He's definitely not a defender at all. And so I think you still have, in terms of that traditional point guard who can play a little bit of defense, pass the ball, I think you still have that need.
Yeah, and this is where they might be interesting in the buyout market. There were a lot of reports that the Clippers would be interested in bringing in Westbrook if he's bought up by the Jazz.
Which, again, I don't think is still going to solve issues.
I will say this. Westbrook fits a lot better with the Clippers than he ever did with the Lakers. Because you see, Paul George can shoot. Kawhi can shoot pretty decently well. Norman Powell can shoot. Robert Covington can shoot. There's a lot more floor spacing for Westbrook, so he's a better fit with the Clippers. Plus, I think he'd prefer to stay in LA, to be honest with you. I mean, he's going to the basement, but, it's fine.
Well, he doesn't have to move houses.
Exactly. He doesn't have to move. I think it's more likely than not he's going to end
LeBron's
up
neighbor.
a Clipper. Pretty much, he's going to end up LeBron's neighbor.
Well, he is LeBron's neighbor.
Oh, sick.
Yeah.
Man, Westbrook's going to end up on the Clippers. Just you watch, it's going to drop. But yeah, in terms of the Clippers in this move, I'm going to give them an A. I think they basically have addressed all their needs that they're looking for. They low-key made the moves that they had to make. I liked a lot of what they did, man. Now, who they'll get to fill that last hole, we'll see. But I like what they did. Now, for the Rockets, you got rid of Eric Gordon, okay, but you got back John Wall, who you got rid of, and Danny Green, but you got no draft compensation for them at all. Which I'm like, what's sort of the situation? The way I kind of look at it is this might be a move that they're doing to do right by Eric Gordon because he's been a good soldier for them. So they send him to a situation that's better for him. regardless of the cost. And they're most likely they're buying out John Wall anyways, and potentially they're going to buy out Danny Green as well. But I just think like you get no draft capital, you get no young assets back.
I think the main thing for them is probably the financial flexibility of this move.
Maybe, but like they have cap space, so I don't really understand what the trajectory was. Like I didn't really like this move. I would give them a D on this move because I just think they didn't do anything. They just got worse. I think by trading away Eric Gordon. For Memphis, I think they were looking for a wing player. Now Memphis got clowned a lot because the Western Conference got a lot better, and a lot of people are blaming John Morant.
They're definitely fine in the Western Conference.
Hey man, John Morant said they're fine in the West, but hey, now you got to deal with Kevin Durant, LeBron. They're all loading up, so have fun with that. But they need to get another wing guy, so getting Luke Kennard isn't really a bad idea. He's under a decent contract. He can shoot as well. I think the question will be how much is he gonna play for them. Now I think he's gonna be more playable than Danny Green was for them, but again, and how much of a liability is he gonna be on the defensive end? We'll see. I'm gonna give this like a B minus maybe. Like I'm not like it was okay. Like you didn't have to give up a ton to make this move, but it is what it is. And I think again for the Denver Nuggets, I already mentioned it. Was 2 second-round picks really the best you can get? They probably could have gotten more, and now they still need to address their backup point guard situation, which potentially could be filled by Reggie Jackson if he's bought up by the Hornets.
Colorado guy.
Yeah, by another Colorado guy. Like it could end up working, but I just think the Nuggets kind of dropped the ball on this one. So I'm gonna give them a C. Yeah, it is what it is. But I think overall the Clippers did a pretty solid job in my opinion.
No, they're definitely I think one of the winners of this trade deadline. Now moving quickly into some of the smaller trades that happened, we're gonna go a bit quicker on this. Starting off with a 4-team trade with the Detroit Pistons, Atlanta Hawks, the Golden State Warriors, and the Portland Trailblazers. Now, the Pistons received James Wiseman. The Atlanta Hawks received Sadiq Bey. The Golden State Warriors received Gary Payton. And the Portland Trailblazers received Kevin Knox and a bunch of second-round picks.
Bro, this move almost scared me because the possibility of the Warriors to get Sadiq Bey scared the living crap out of me.
Well, they technically did get him, but they traded him away, which I'm assuming was a money move, basically. For the Pistons, I mean, they gave up on Sadiq Bey, who, granted, he was up and down this year. But I mean, you've seen the potential. He scored 50 plus last season, right?
Solid player.
So you gave up on him. You get back a huge project in James Wiseman. Yeah, you're gonna have your work cut out for you. And again, they already tried this with Marvin Bagley, who, granted, he's been serviceable in Detroit, but he's not. I don't think he's gonna be the Marvin Bagley that we hoped he would be.
Not number 2 overall pick material for sure.
Yeah. So I think I'd give this a C for the Detroit Pistons. They didn't really get any better.
I'm actually a lot lower on. I don't know what the hell Detroit is doing. Sadiq Bey is a lot more of a useful player, especially when you factor in next to Cade and all the guys that they got. I just don't understand what was the point of making this project deal for James Wiseman.
On the flip side, I think Atlanta stole Sadiq Bey.
Bro,
they did not have to really give up anything for him. And he's going to fit right in on the bench. He's going to be, I guess, the backup small forward for the Atlanta Hawks. And I think he's going to do quite well. So I'd give them an A for this.
He gives them defense. He gives them shooting. And some, like, again, and he's young. Like, he's a perfect fit with them, right? Actually, he's actually what they needed, to be honest with you.
Yeah. For the Golden State Warriors, this was kind of weird because they literally just had Gary Payton and they let him go. Now, it's probably due to the cap hit and stuff. But I mean, it was still a weird move nonetheless.
Gary Payton would have probably taken a discount to stay with the Warriors. I think the Warriors just overestimated their depth. They're like, oh, hey, our young guys are ready to go. We don't need you guys.
I think that was the main issue.
I think they overestimated, and they're like, oh, shit, these guys aren't ready for anything.
Yeah. But either way, Golden State basically cut their losses with James Wiseman, and they retained Gary Payton II, who basically, I don't think anybody except for a guy like Steve Kerr could probably get the most out of Gary Payton. So I think this works well for Gary Payton as well. This is the ideal spot for him. So I think this works.
It sucks that him and Jordan Poole did a jersey swap right before this trade.
It worked out pretty well for the Warriors. I'd give them a B+. And then for the Trailblazers, I mean, you wasted Gary Payton. You wasted signing Gary Payton II. And you got some picks, so, like, who cares? I'll give you
Why hasn't Dame asked for a trade yet? Like,
See,
what are
I
you
don't know.
doing, Portland? What are you doing? Like, this was a very weird trade. Um, I'm really kind of annoyed that Toronto didn't try to make a play for Sadiq Bey, but we'll talk about Toronto. Actually, right now, let's talk about Toronto. Now, we expected the Raptors to be kind of big players in this deadline, but then when you actually take a step back and understand who Masai Ujiri is as an executive,
All these casuals and new fans who don't understand who Masai Ujiri was, like we called it. We called it.
Masai hates the trade deadline. Masai likes surefire bets. He doesn't like to take a gamble mid-season that could potentially ruin him, not only for the remainder of the season, but potentially moving forward
Well,
as
he
well.
talked about it in his press conference that he views the trade deadline as only a time for short-term deals,
Exactly.
nothing long-term.
Exactly. And so the reality is the Raptors only made one move. They acquired Jakob Poeltl from the San Antonio Spurs in exchange for Kem Burge, a protected top 6 protected first round pick in 2024, and 2 second round picks, the 2023 and 2025. Now, for the trade itself, they addressed the need. The Raptors, they desperately needed a center. They needed a guy, a big bodied who can defend, who can be a rim protector, who can guard, defend at a decent level, be a pick and roll guy, be a good screener, all
He's
those
also a
things.
good passer
And
too.
he's also, yeah, he's a good playmaker as well. And the thing with Jakob is that the Raptors, they know who the guy is. They know who he is. They
Yak and skills.
Exactly. The Yak and Skills connection is back. Shout out Open Gym. They're gonna have great content moving forward. So Jakob, they know who he is. They're familiar with the player. Nick Nurse understands how he can already utilize him. They're familiar. The guys have chemistry with each other. So this move had very low risk from a roster standpoint, where bringing Jakob in, you plug him in, most likely than not he's going to work, which is why Masai made this move. And then when you talk about the future, Masai is already familiar with the representation, with Jakob's representation. So they can already start talking contract extensions as well.
And they have his bird rights too.
And they have his bird rights. Now, they also got rid of a player in Kem Burge who they're not using, actually. They weren't using Kem Burge. And to be honest with that contract doesn't really look that great anymore. And so he wasn't playing, and now you traded a player you're not using for a player who you will use. So that's always great. Now, for me, the draft capital was the big annoyance to me. It was a lot. For a lot of teams that were flipping second round picks left, right, and center, the Raptors were like among the handful of teams that traded a first rounder, which I understand it. And when you look at it from the fact that, you traded a first rounder for Jakob, that doesn't make sense. But the fact that you got San Antonio to take on Kem Burge's bad contract and you still retained your assets in Gary Trent Jr. and Delano Banton, who the Spurs were reportedly interested in.
The pick was also protected.
Yeah, I would have preferred a slightly higher protection, but it is what it is. This means that the Raptors, they intend to be good next year. They want to be better, so they're not going to be a dumpster fire like they are this season. So hopefully, they want to be better. So that's some good news. And again, this move makes them better in the short term. It makes them better like right away. They're a better team than they were before the deadline. The question is now, how do you keep all three of your free agents, Jakob Poeltl, Fred VanVleet, and Gary Trent Jr. in the offseason? That's the question. And I think that's my frustration with the Raptors, the fact that you didn't do anything to help you make that decision easier. You kicked your problem down to the offseason, which is going to make things difficult. Now, I would have moving a contract like Chris Boucher might help free up the money to make you resign all these guys. But again, does MLSE want to go into the luxury tax? That's a whole other.
And for a team that's, I mean, at best, they're a fourth seed, maybe.
Mm-hmm. We'll have to see what the offseason looks like in terms of like what's going to happen in the Eastern Conference now that things kind of dramatically shifted back to the West. But in terms of this move itself, I think this was a needed move. I think the Raptors, I wish it wasn't the only move that they made, but I understand this is a Masai Ujiri move. This is exactly what he is and what he does. I'm going to give them a B- because I think it'll make the Raptors better now and going forward. It improves the vibes too. Shout out Jakob. And I think for the Spurs, I mean, they got a first rounder for Jakob. I mean, you can't really ask for much more than that, man. So I'm going to give them a B. This helps the rebuild.
One more point I will add. For all the good stuff we've said about Jakob Poeltl, he does not solve that shooting issue.
He's not a shooter.
And especially with how bad the Raptors have been shooting, and now you add Jakob Poeltl next to guys like Pascal Siakam and Scotty Barnes, it could be a little bit of an issue. to say the least.
And I understand there was frustrations, and for the Raptors, they didn't. The reason why they didn't make those big time moves that we all expected them to make was probably because they weren't offered those moves. The type of players, like I know there was reports now that the Memphis and Indiana offered 3 first rounders for OG, but if I'm Masai, I want players too, and that's exactly what Masai wants.
Memphis picks are probably gonna be garbage.
Exactly. Anyway. So you have to understand how to value your guys, and Masai has to weigh the risk versus reward, and I think it sucks as a fan because we want to see those big improvements, but ultimately we just have to be patient, and that's okay.
Next up, another quick trade: the New York Knicks and Portland Trailblazers. The New York Knicks got Josh Hart. The Blazers got Cam Reddish, Ryan Arcidiacono, Svi Mikhailuk, who was I think rerouted to Charlotte if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And they got a protected first round pick in this year actually. For New York, this was I think a very good trade for them. They pulled off I think one of the best low-key moves of this trade deadline.
Jalen Brunson was hyped.
Yeah, they reunited Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart, Villanova teammates, and Josh Hart brings some good 3-and-D presence for the New York Knicks, and I think he works quite well. So I would give the Knicks an A-.
So Tibbs is playing him 38 minutes a game, right?
Maybe.
That's probably because
for the Blazers, I think Josh Hart wasn't really moving the needle, but I mean it is what it is. You got a project in Cam Reddish, so we'll see what he does. C+ for the Portland Trailblazers.
I don't know what the Blazers are doing, man. I really think they're really disappointing Damian Lillard, I think, right now. But yeah, no, low-key decent move by the New York Knicks. As your resident Knicks hater, I'll subside and I'll say, listen, this was a pretty low-key good move for them. Finally, the last trade, it's kind of small trade we want to talk about, is a small trade between the New Orleans Pelicans and the San Antonio Spurs. The Pelicans receive Josh Richardson, and the Spurs get Devontae Graham and 4 second-round picks. Now, for New Orleans, they definitely needed some shooting, and they definitely needed some help on the wing. So getting a guy like Josh Richardson was a pretty good move, and they didn't really need to give up much to get him. I think after the KD trade kind of happened and understanding that Zion's health concerns, I think the Pelicans are a lot more hesitant to kind of make that go-for type of move that we hope they would make, at least for the Raptors at least. So that's kind of why I think settling on a move like this is kind of safe for them. So I'm going to give them about a B. And for the Spurs, more picks. More picks. Doesn't hurt them at all. And Devontae Graham can actually be a serviceable player on a relatively affordable contract. So I'm going to give the Spurs a B as well. So pretty low-key move. But again, there was probably a lot more trades that we could have probably fit into this. There was a lot of smaller moves here and there. And I think the biggest thing moving forward is the buyout market is going to be very, very interesting. So stay tuned for what some news on the buyout situation, because that's going to be very interesting. There's going to be a lot of big names. And with the way that the Western Conference is now, teams are going to be loading up. Maybe guys that we haven't heard of for a while, like Carmelo Anthony might be coming back.
Maybe.
You never know. But yeah, so those are some of the biggest trades that happened. Let us know what you guys think. Which trades were your favorite? Which trades did you hate? And kind of your thoughts on it. So let us know on the comment section on YouTube or on social media. And bringing us finally into a very short up and under segment for this week, because obviously the trades were the most insanity that we had to deal with. But just broke today. Are you up or under on the all-star replacements for some of the injured players? So in the Western Conference, Steph Curry and Zion Williamson are not participating because of injury. So those two, so for their replacements, John Morant and Lauri Markkanen are moving as starters. And to replace the reserves, Anthony Edwards and De'Aaron Fox were named first-time all-stars for the Western Conference.
Well, Anthony Edwards second, I think. Second.
No, it's his first.
Oh, he didn't make it before?
Mm-mm.
Oh,
it's his first. So both first-time all-stars. And then in the Eastern Conference, Kevin Durant is not playing because of injury, so he was a starter. So Joel Embiid is going to be replacing him in the starters role, even though Kevin Durant is now in the Western Conference. This makes no sense anymore either, because Kyrie Irving also is now in the Western Conference, but he's an Eastern All-Star.
Yep.
Makes no sense, but
that would have been weird if they still had the same format where it was East and West.
Yeah,
at least they don't have that same format, so now it's like the conferences don't matter besides the voting part.
Yeah, so it kind of saved the NBA in that sense. But in the Eastern Conference, to get the replacement for Kevin Durant, it is going to be Pascal Siakam, becoming a second-time NBA All-Star. Well-deserved, in my opinion. But are you up or under on the All-Star replacements?
I'm hella up on it.
Shout out Pascal.
And De'Aaron Fox and Pascal, I think, were 3 of the biggest names that were arguably snubbed.
Yeah,
from the All-Star
ESPN,
team.
you include them in the picture.
Yeah, and so I think it's great that they actually made it, because they were the biggest snubs, right? I think so. Yeah, like they all made it. So I think I'm hella up on it.
Anthony Edwards was very surprising, but again, hey, listen, I called him from the day he was drafted. I liked him as the number 1 overall pick. I think Minnesota did a great job getting him. Now he's an all-star. So shout out to Anthony Edwards, man.
Yeah, shout out to Anthony Edwards. And then finally, are you up or under on, of course, the biggest, I think, moment from this past week?
History.
LeBron James becoming the all-time leading scorer in the regular season, breaking a 38-year record held. 38?
39.
39-year record held by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So are you up or under on that?
I mean, I'm hella up on it. Dude, we witnessed history take place. Like, imagine in our lifetime, we get to see a player who came into the league. And for us in particular, this must be what it felt like in the 90s to watch Jordan's whole career. We witnessed LeBron's whole career where he went from like the chosen one and all those things to leading Cleveland to the finals, going to Miami, winning championships there, going back to Cleveland. Now he's with LA, and now he broke the all-time scoring record, a record that we didn't even think was going to be broken.
That's the main thing, right? Nobody ever thought the Kareem record would be broken. And now with LeBron, and LeBron still has a couple more years left at the very least. So he's going to add to this record as well.
He's going to make this record unbreakable, but we say that now, and it's probably going to be broken down the line as well. So it's just an incredible accomplishment for LeBron James, and especially he is our generation's GOAT. Like, he's the greatest of all time of this generation. No disputing that. Now, you can argue on, the official GOAT talk. But again, he cemented himself as one of the greatest to ever do it. And that is never going to change, in my opinion.
And I mean, you talk about like the record of records. Everyone wants to score points, right? That's what everyone wants to do. And LeBron is the greatest scorer of all time. That's undisputed. Now, whether you want to say talent-wise who's the best scorer, but LeBron is the greatest scorer in NBA history, which is crazy to think about.
And I think we all sort of underestimate the fact that his longevity is something that we probably will never see again. The fact that the dude is going to play 20-plus years at the highest of the high level and, again, kept himself relatively healthy, kept his body in top shape, played multiple final, playing like 9, 10 finals runs?
Yeah,
like
10.
This dude has played more games than anybody else, and he's still doing it in year 20.
And one more small point, I would say a large part of that is to do with, I don't think LeBron gets the credit for this, but he's reinvented especially his offensive game a number of times. We talk about, LeBron for his whole career just ran to the rim and dunked. No, he hasn't. If you look at his fadeaway, his mid-range game, he's now a shooter out from outside. So like, again, LeBron doesn't average 27 for his career for no reason and become the greatest scorer of all time. You can't just, like, a lot of haters like to say, he played 20 years. LeBron averaged 27 over 20 years.
And if you look at the breakdown per era, he was so consistent that he was averaging like 26, 27 every
He averaged 30 in the dead era where teams scored like 80 points a game.
Yeah, like LeBron James, insane, absolutely deserves it. What a huge accomplishment. So congrats to LeBron James for breaking that all-time record. It was a great piece of history to witness. I mean, it just sucks that the Lakers lost that damn game, which
ruined a great moment.
It really ruined the great moment. And it was really weird that it happened in the third quarter. So that fourth quarter was kind of useless to watch.
Yeah.
I didn't watch it for sure, but I did watch
AD ruined that moment. Well, I mean, he basically did he was saying with that whole moment. But also, like, bro, he fumbled the ball every single time I saw him touch it.
Yeah, it was definitely a weird one. But congratulations to LeBron James nonetheless. And with that concludes this week's episode. We hope you guys enjoyed it. Definitely subscribe to the show on all the various platforms. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, and of course on YouTube. Definitely subscribe so you don't miss more great content from us in the future. Of course, we're going to be getting into some of the buyout to candidates and kind of those stuff in the next few episodes. We're also going to be talking about the playoff previews coming up in March is coming up soon, April. So those are going to be coming up. So definitely stay tuned for that. Follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at @UpLetterN_podcast, Facebook.com/UpAndUnderPodcast for all the latest updates whenever we post a new episode or reaction to news as they occur. So definitely follow us there. Also, check out our website, UpAndUnderPodcast.com. It's our central hub for the show. It's a place where we write blog posts with every single episode. So if you don't have time to listen or watch the full episode, you can read about it on our website. Every one of our episodes are posted with the video, audio, and the written version all in one place. So definitely check that out if you haven't done so. Yeah, man. Crazy deadline.
Crazy. Yeah, this was a bit of a long episode, but like I mean, there's so much stuff
There's
to happen.
so much, man. And with that, that concludes this week's episode. We'll see you guys all in the next one. Take it easy.
Easy.